Hi everyone, and welcome once again to Ruby's Classic Cooking. And today I'm making coffee cake, a chocolate topped coffee cake. So this is one of many variations of this recipe, but this is one that was my family favorite for many years. So I don't know why I didn't make this one before. I guess I probably thought I had it already. That's okay. Let's start off this recipe with 1/3 of a cup of shortening, which, don't worry metric people, all the metric measurements and directions will be in my description box down below. So you can use butter if you don't have shortening available in your neighborhood. It's just this recipe calls for shortening, so that's how I make it. I have substituted butter for this before, and it makes a really lovely cake with butter or with shortening. These older cookbooks, shortening was cheaper than butter, so to appeal to the budget-conscious homemaker, they would use shortening instead of butter for these recipes. But that's okay. So that's my 1/3 of a cup of shortening. And I'm going to beat in together with that shortening, I'm going to beat in a cup of granulated sugar. That's like white sugar, castor sugar I think in the UK, fine grained sugar. I'm just going to beat these two together until the shortening and the sugar are like one ingredient. There's a chemical reason for that. Baking is somewhat a mixture of chemistry and mechanical mixing, but there's a certain amount of chemistry in here that if you combine the ingredients in the wrong way or in the wrong order, your cake isn't going to turn out. So that's why it's important to follow the directions when you're making a cake, because the way you combine the ingredients makes a difference to the outcome. Makes a big difference. When you're combining these two, you can either use just a plain old wooden spoon, which I'm using today, my trusty scraper and my trusty wooden spoon today, or you could use a handheld electric mixer, or you could even use your break out your stand mixer for this if you want. If you're just going to do this with simple equipment, this cake will turn out just fine using just a wooden spoon. And your shortening or your butter should be room temperature, because otherwise it won't combine very well with your sugar. You'll have a real fight on your hands to get them to combine properly. Now the important thing about this is to make sure that you don't have any loose sugar left in your bowl, that you don't have any lumps of shortening or butter that aren't combined with your sugar. So that should look about like that, okay? And now I'm going to add an egg and a teaspoon of vanilla to this mixture. That's why it's important that your shortening and your sugar be combined. Otherwise your egg isn't going to work with them properly. Let's just get this in here. And now I'm going to add a teaspoon of vanilla. Now this is homemade vanilla, made with vanilla beans that are split down the middle and vodka. There's lots of recipes on how to do that on YouTube too. Not by me, but by other people. Just look up making vanilla. Or you can buy the natural stuff at the grocery store already made for you. Now you beat these two together until they're light and fluffy. This is how you build up your muscles, by the way. I'm going to put some arm muscle on you. Just do a bunch of beating of batters. That should look like that. Look at that. And now for the next step, and I'm going to sift. Who holds a flour sifter these days? I'm going to blend together 1.5 cups of flour. That's all-purpose flour in Canada, strong flour or bread flour in the UK and the USA. Okay? And to that, I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of baking powder. Now remember, that's not baking soda, it's baking powder. Totally different ingredient. 2 teaspoons, which is 10 milliliters, by the way. Okay. And a half a teaspoon of salt. Yes, a half a teaspoon of salt. Okay, this is a teaspoon. I'm going to cheat and eyeball a half a teaspoon. I know I should get up my half a measuring spoon and do that with a half a teaspoon measuring spoon, but you know, I've been doing this recipe a long time. I'm gonna get a little lazy today, okay? Sorry. Yeah, I'm just gonna mix these two together, these three things together, just so it doesn't all look like flour. It looks like this. Okay. And so I have this combined together. Now I'm going to go back to my main bowl here with my my sugar, my sugar, my shortening, my egg, and my vanilla in it. And I'm going to make, and I have a cup of milk. I'm using whole milk, homogenized 3.5% milk, 3.5% butterfat milk. I'm going to be adding 3 dry and 2 liquid additions, beating in between each. So that means I'm going to guesstimate 1/3 of this amount of flour in here. And I'm going to stir that in. Now this mixture in my bowl is nice and yellow because of the egg yolk. So if your egg yolk isn't bright yellow, this will be a little less yellow. If you use butter, it'll probably be a bit more yellow. Okay, there you go. And if you think you've added more than 1/3 to that, don't panic, because eventually all of it's going to get added in here. And I'm going to add half of my milk, because it's 2 liquid additions, so that means about a half a cup of milk goes in here. Roughly half a cup of milk. And now I'm going to carefully stir this in. Don't get too vigorous because you'll splash milk all over the place. That's not what you want to do. It'll start to break down a little bit, and then it'll get to be more of a nice smooth mixture. Yes, just stir till you have a nice smooth texture in your bowl. There you go. That's what that looks like. Now I'm going to add another 1/3 of my flour in here. And maybe my portions aren't exactly precise, but all my flour and all of my milk are going to end up in this bowl anyway, so if it's a little off, it doesn't really matter. And the rest of my milk goes in. And now the rest of my flour mixture goes in. And now I have my batter. When I get these mixed together, I'm going to have my batter. And that's my cake base. My basic coffee cake base. And of course I'm going to clean out my spoon and clean off my bowl and stir it and make sure everything in here is evenly and equally combined. Make sure there aren't any lumps left in your batter when you're done. And it should look pretty much like that, okay? And now you're supposed to put your batter into a 9 by 9, 9" by 9" square pan. But you can either use one like this, Pyrex, or this is a stoneware one that I'm going to use. I'm going to use the stoneware one because it doesn't have to be greased. So this one I'd have to put a layer of grease on, so just to avoid a few calories. So right now I'm just going to put my batter into my pan, my prepared pan. Of course you have to make sure to clean off your spoon. And this is my basic coffee cake base, and now I'm going to be adding the chocolate crumb topping. This is 3 tablespoons of melted butter, or you can use margarine if you want to, but I've always preferred butter. And I'm going to add to that a half a cup of brown sugar. Brown sugar is this is an old-fashioned one, so it's really brown. That's a quarter of a cup, so 2/4 of a cup equals a half a cup. Do your math again. Now I need 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, good old cinnamon. I seem to use that in a lot of recipes, cinnamon. Cinnamon and brown sugar. Very popular flavor in my household. So, get a bit generous with that. There we go. A little bit more, just for luck. And 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour go into this, which I've already measured into this measuring cup. Now you can also add a half a cup of chopped nuts. They call for walnuts, you can use pecans, whatever kind of your favorite nuts. So I'm just going to mix these to get together in my little bowl here. And you want it to look like crumbs when you're finished. So you want it to be all blended together here, and you want to soak up the melted butter with your sugar and your flour. And you want to just stir your cinnamon and everything so that you have this lovely crumb topping that you're going to sprinkle all over the top of your cake. Just keep stirring until you have all your ingredients nicely blended together, and nothing's dry in here. None of your brown sugar is still dry. It's going to look sort of like, it's going to look like that. It's going to kind of look like that. Wet. A bit like wet cement. Or wet sand. Doesn't taste anything like that, mind you, at all. Not in the slightest. That's the thing about baking yourself. If you prefer dark, to use the old-fashioned brown sugar when you're doing this, great. That's the wonderful thing. That's the wonderful thing about baking in your own kitchen. If you want to use old-fashioned brown sugar that's browner, hey, you can use that kind. If you prefer to use yellow brown sugar, which is lighter in color, you can use that too. So, your preferences matter. And if you don't happen to like cinnamon, then put nutmeg in or some spice that you actually like. Try substitutions. If I don't like walnuts in a recipe, I'll substitute pecans. If you don't happen to like pecans or walnuts, then you can use a different kind of nuts, or you can leave them out. I'm leaving them out today. My family were never all that fond of walnuts or nuts in things, so frequently I just leave them out. For the chocolate top version of this cake. Now, if this were the regular basic cake, I would just sprinkle this on top and I'd be done. But because I'm making the chocolate top version, I'm going to use chocolate morsels, I believe they're called in the United States. We call them chocolate chips in Canada. I'm not sure what they might call them in your neighborhood, but they're supposed to be semi-sweet, and unfortunately when I bought mine, they were sold out of semi-sweet, so I had to buy milk chocolate ones, and they, tell you the truth, I'm not going to do it again because they're way sweeter than semi-sweet, and I really don't like them as well for baking, but I have them and I'm going to use them up. Anyway, okay, I'm just going to sprinkle these on top of my cake. There you go, all nicely sprinkled chocolate chips. And now, and for the final thing, I'm going to sprinkle my crumb coating on top. Just randomly sprinkle little blobs of it all over the place. Make a nice even layer. If the kids are around the kitchen and want to help, they could help with this part, sprinkling on the chocolate chips and adding this to the cake. If you want to involve your kids in the baking process, they can certainly help with this, with clean hands, of course. This is now going to go into a preheated 350-degree oven for 45 to 50 minutes. 45 to 50 minutes. So when it's all cooked, I'll be back to show you what my beautiful finished cake looks like. All hot from the oven. And it's best if you serve it warm when you're serving it at the table, especially you want those chocolate chips to be nice and melty. Yum. Just finish sprinkling these on here. And there's my cake ready to go in the oven, and I'll be back in an hour to show you what it looks like when it comes out. See you then. Well, here's my coffee cake, fresh and hot from the oven. And I forgot to tell you, this cuts up into 9 nice sized pieces, or you can cut smaller pieces if you happen to have people with smaller appetites. I hope you enjoyed my recipe today, and I hope that you will like, subscribe, make a comment below, and give this recipe a try. There's about 15 variations to this recipe, and I'm going to be filming some of them and showing you some of them as the months and weeks roll along here. Well, I hope you'll come back and watch what I'm cooking next time on Ruby's Classic Cooking. Bye for now.